Hello. In this presentation, I want to share with you one of my favorite ways of working with astrology, which is to plan ahead. And I'm talking from day to day, week to week, month to year, decade to decade. um, but before I go into the meat of the presentation, and I just want to clarify a distinction between planning and predicting, or rather how what I'm going to share with you differs from predicting and how I see, the difference between the two. So planning, in the sense I'm going to share with you, is completely uh, putting an agency on you. In other words, without the work that you have planned for, um, I'm not saying there isn't the outcome that you have, you envisioned in the future of yours. But in my experience, and it's certainly my sort of belief, I suppose, as well, without that work, I'm not likely to get it, or not the way, that it's fully aligned with me. So, in other words, after putting all the work that you have planned for, in a way, you are predicting that what you envision and set out at the start of your journey will happen. But again, there is a big but here, and a caveat, in the sense that the point of planning is to address the key turning points in time and allow whatever life, universe, whatever you want to call it, sends your way as a challenge, and allowing that to influence your next step. So you are planning, but you're not sticking to the plan rigidly. You keep pivoting as life changes, and you know in which corners of that journey, or in which steps, in what timeline you are likely to get those curveballs, or those, to be faced with certain challenges, like I say. So you plan for that time and are vigilant, or rather open, really, not so much vigilant. That sounds too controlling. This is stay open to whatever's coming your way, and then adjust the course accordingly. So in that sense, planning isn't about predicting, or rather, setting a goal and then making sure you deliver the goal. It's knowing that there are those time pockets in your future that are particularly ripe with potential of certain flavors. And the method of planning with astrology allows you to make the most of those currents around you. It's like, again, I think I use this analogy often, like a surfer, getting onto the wave, to, or there is probably even a better analogy, but what I mean by this, it's like getting on that crest of the wave to take you to another leg of your journey, far faster, but not to mention beautiful and flowing. So that's the kind of idea behind planning. You identify those pockets of time where certain energies are really particularly conducive to you making really particularly wise and meaningful decisions for your journey. And then, like I say, adjusting accordingly and arriving at at a destination, even though it's really all these destinations are temporary, where you are most fully accomplished with everything you have journeyed with up until that point, and you have realized that all that potential you have generated and created and experienced on your way to that. So that's why it's not predicting, but in many ways it's like you are creating what you want, and you're creating a future that's most aligned with you, basically. Which brings me to the other point I kind of wanted to elaborate on, which I touched on already, but I have a few more things I want to say about it, which is why I plan with astrology. So it's like you may depending on your age, basically, but you may relate to this. So I don't know, let's say some 20 years ago, 30 years ago, probably in fact 30 years ago, more like it, I would have been looking to, I wasn't using astrology for planning, so I would have been looking to the outside world, whoever I at the time thought was particularly, I would aspire to be, or they were very inspiring, and I wanted to have a version of the life they have, because it seemed or sounded really attractive. So I would kind of have my goals set for every year, let's say, with the, very much flavored by those other role models, let's call them, that I had, only to find that by the time I arrive at those, so I manifested those goals, and more often than not, I did. I would have found out. I found out that yeah, it's kind of like, is that really all? Is that what it was? Well, it wasn't exactly what I thought, or it didn't live up to my expectations. And my point with this is that I was, like I say, looking externally to to the idea of success and what feels fulfilling and satisfying. But if you work with astrology, you start with your chart, and then you figure out what is it for you, particularly for you, what's success, what's meaningful, what's accomplishment. And then once you identify that, you then plan. So you essentially identify what your needs, desires, and wants are, as opposed to what you think you are. And then you plan accordingly. So your journey is much more aligned with your core, and it's like you're letting yourself lead you in a way. And then the best piece there as well, or one of the great pieces, when you plan with astrology, is that you then have to live more intentionally, because you kind of have to be. There are daily occurrences, and like I say, I personally use it for daily, but also long term. So you're kind of constantly observing what's going on with you. You know what's coming up. You kind of then are very conscious of those energies coming your way, and then you're working with them. So you're very present, and you live intentionally, because you have those intentions of, okay, this is coming up now, so my intention is to, and then fill in the blank. And that in itself is like gold. It's a great way to live life. I mean, it doesn't, take away. It doesn't make one's life perfect or easy, but it makes it lived and alive and full and satisfying, even with all the pain that will come and go. So a few other things to mention is, as in for reasons as reasons to plan with astrology, is creating a meaningful life, contemplating your identity and life's purpose, supporting your personal growth, catalyzing your soul's evolution. And the last three are one of my favorites, because they're really easy to see the results straight away, how you've done well, how you managed. So to manage difficult energies, to prevent unnecessary conflict, and to improve your relationships. So before I go into the various ways you can plan, I just want to kind of share a couple of tips, if you like. So first is a planning tip, and bringing human design here. So although there is a tutorial on how to work with both, this is irrelevant really. You don't need to know anything about human design. All you need to do is to Google Jovian archive chart, and I'll put a link into the description. And you get your chart, and you're basically looking for this arrow, as you can see circled here in yellow. And you ask and see which way it's pointing. If it's pointing to the left, that means you're a specific manifester, which means you're one of those people who can put a number, like I want to earn 10,000 a month or a year or whatever, and that's what you will manifest. That figure is the idea. And I'm specific manifester, and it works. And or like if you want if you want a lover that looks a certain way, you can manifest. It doesn't mean that anything else that comes with that will, with a person, like the personality or the trait, but you can also think of that as well. So the more specific you get, the better you are, or you will manifest, the better you are manifesting, if you're a specific manifester. And if you're non-specific, if it's pointing to the right, so the opposite direction than the one on the picture here on the screen, that means you want to tap into the feeling, how you want to feel. So let's say you want to be on Oprah. That's your dream, one day to be interviewed because you have a bestseller or something. And so let's say that's a reason. So what I would do is, instead of imagining the title of the bestseller, the actual book, or the actual interview in the sense of specifics, I wouldn't even worry about Oprah. I wouldn't even, let's say that you think you want to be on opera, but I would suggest, if you're non-specific, not to even name it. It's not necessarily, doesn't have to be opera, it may not be opera. But what you want to is imagine how it would feel to be in that room with her. So you can imagine her as a way of just getting that feeling going for you, but don't get hung up if you can lose the specifics and just carry the feeling and identify the feeling, and then identify all the other feelings you need to feel, and at those different junctures, as I'm going to go through. And don't get hung up on the detail is kind of the way to manifest if you're not specific, if the arrow is pointed to the right. And the other piece of like a tip is a sort of caution. This is, as everything I always share, it's based in my experience. This is to do with eclipses, and as you may know by now, I've spoken of this a few times, is that they're really a wild time in the sense of they're amplifiers and they're curveballs. So essentially what you want is that during the eclipses, so between the first eclipse and the last eclipse, and we can have sometimes just 2 or 3 or 4, that within that timeline you try to do, or you plan, the only thing to plan for is to do as much of whatever it is that you want to attract, either do or be or feel. So that's kind of the essence. That's really, in a nutshell, what you want to be planning for during the eclipse season. So if, like the one that's coming up on, which I'll have a video next week or the week after, I can't remember now, but I'll be announcing like a video guide to it, somewhat different than last year, or the last one, sorry. So sorry, my point is, if it's very light one and it's easy for you to maintain those amazing or great energies and great visions that you want to see yourself in the near future being and doing, then great. But like the last winter one we had, when the Pluto-Saturn conjunction was happening as well, I don't know, but I know for many people it was very, very, very heavy one. So there will be, if not this next one, there will be another one which is quite heavy. And either way, if during the eclipses you're struggling, there is stuff coming up and it's not happy, and you're struggling to keep your vibe high, if you like, then the thing to do and to be very vigilant about this. So never fight. Let things, if you can, if you can afford it, if you can allow it, allow those feelings and darknesses and heavinesses and grief and sadness, whatever it is, anger, to come up. But make sure not to be a victim of it, not to feel powerless in the face of it. Engage with it, fearlessly confront it. So that is what's going to be amplified. So it's like you are acting as a spiritual warrior, or as a soul warrior, as your own protector, as your own parent, as your own adult, right? Just doing all that inner work, shadow work, call it what you like, during the eclipses. So allow the heavier stuff to come up. Don't fight it. Just don't think you'll be amplifying it if you allow it to happen. How you engage with it, make sure that you do that well, that's the work, and then you're amplifying and attracting more of that, or rather amplifying your skill, and you'll see you come out at the other side all of a sudden so good at it. And I vouch in the sense that I certainly experienced that. And another piece there is that, being that it's such a wild time and energies are so intense, and it is a portal really, you kind of want to honor that, and you don't want to be too rigid in your agenda, in your timetable through the eclipses, certainly in your inner work kind of timetable, and stay open to whatever comes your way to maybe change your course and mold you and change you. Yeah, so that's the kind of almost honoring the fact that they're so powerful. Don't just go with it more so than not, right? And then cut other things, like if it's easy for you, if it's an easy, light-hearted kind of time, or it's not too heavy going, use it for vision setting, vision boards, art journals, create your own affirmation cards, and it's also, I put it here, it's changing your old ways. And that's through this shadow work piece that I said. If things are coming up, that's the old you, and So working through that to transform it is a great time, is a great use of this period. So this is now stating sort of so now I'm getting into the planning piece, actual planning. So just kind of going to touch on the methods that are basically used, which is obvious. I mean, if you are into astrology, you already assume this. So it's transits really. So I'm using transits for short-term planning, daily, weekly, or monthly. Use returns as well. It's a different sort of planning. I use specific life theme planning, which is long term, quite a few years kind of, and it's my favorite. I love it the most. And then on the other side, I use a couple of standalone charts, solar return and progressions, and for in specific ways and for specific reasons. And I'll talk to you. I'll talk about that in a moment. And just again to be on the same page, the transits method I'm referring to here is when you have two planets. So you'll see what I mean later. I'll explain how you do that. But you have your natal planet, and then you have a transiting planet. That's how and so you're using this transiting planet to mark the time, important times, and the important times are conjunction, first quarter square opposition, last quarter square for shorter term, and if it's long term, then I include trines and sextiles as well. So those are your timestamps as you observe this transiting planet moving across this, around the zodiac. And the how to choose what is your transiting planet is you choose a planet that you want the energies of to infuse your natal planet. So I don't know, let's say you have a Venus that's too people pleasing or too kind of soft and too much self-indulgent. So you might want to if you want to kind of strengthen your Venus and kind of get it to mature a bit, or a bit of self-discipline, a bit of boundaries, then you use Saturn. So you use Saturn to transit your natal Venus. So you're looking to Saturn to infuse your natal Venus as it approaches the exact orb of either of these aspects I just listed. And you can feel, if you're intentional and very mindful of it, as I'm suggesting, and the point of planning is to be that, you will feel how this Saturnian, those energies that we just listed, are infusing your Venus and your relationship, or your relationship to yourself, and all these issues that you want Saturn's help with. So that's how you choose. That's your transiting planet, because you want that one to support the other planet. So short-term planning. So this is, if you remember these three kind of points, on the top of the slide here: to manage difficult energies, to prevent unnecessary conflict, and to improve your relationships. This is just so fantastic. You can straight away see it when you start using transits to plan your days, your weeks, your social life. The thing to remember is that there is waxing and waning. What that means, it's when a planet, when let's say Sun is approaching your Moon, and let's say it's a conjunction, let's say conjunction. So as it's approaching, before it actually makes the conjunction, that's a waxing phase. So it's like that's the one that's more intense. So the closer, as it's kind of, the faster moving planets will have a shorter orb. So kind of like in the 3 degrees coming up, maybe even up to 5 degrees, you can feel, well, I don't know. I mean, actually find out for yourself. It will depend on the planets as well. Sun will be more felt, but if Moon is approaching your Sun, possibly less so. So you want to wait till the last couple of degrees that you actually, maybe plan for some activity, because you won't feel it earlier. So there's no hard and fast rule about that. But the point that there is this piece, that as the planet is approaching, the transit planet approaching exact orb to your natal planet in aspect terms, that's the intensity piece. And then the moment it starts going and leaving your planet, the intensity decreases and that phase is waning. So the waxing is more important in terms of all the issues that those transits can trigger, like triggering properly anger, depending what planets are at play here. But all the kind of intensity that the difficult transits can bring will be felt in the run-up to the exact orb of the aspect. So as you can see on the right side of the to the right of the screen, I have a kind of list under natal. So this is again the way I work with this. I found that these are particularly important planets to pay attention when they're being transited. So Pluto, South Node, Moon, Mars, and Saturn. So Pluto, when this is so my natal Pluto, when the Sun is approaching my natal Pluto, I would be very conscious of like it's like a garish spotlight on all the subconscious stuff. So I'm extra watchful of what's if I have to be in the company of others. I'm really careful, watch out for my kind of power tripping, triggers and ego stuff and all the kind of Sun, Pluto. Then it depends on the sign and the house and all of that. But also, it's a great time when Sun is shining on your Pluto to kind of see your Pluto more clearly, and it's like literally the light is shining on your subconscious. So it's kind of great time for shadow work. So if you don't have to be in relationships with other people, I would take time out to kind of do some shadow work, some transforming, darkness into light. Literally, that's what's happening. Um, if Sun is conjunct, I'm going to start with Sun and I'll see if I'll go through the rest. But I'll have some points to make. This is kind of the longest slide because there's so many permutations. So if the Sun, for instance, is approaching your South Node, then that's such a great time. Just pay attention to understand your old patterns that are potentially, if they're not already, they will be soon if you don't do anything about it, and just watch for that. Just wait, don't preempt anything, but be mindful that, so whatever you can see some patterns of yours, like this is who I am, I recognize me as being this kind of person that does this, that feels this, that says this, that behaves this way, and think about it or feel your way around it, or think about it, whatever your kind of primary mode of making sense, whether it's feelings or intuition or mind, rational logic, whatever. Are they, how helpful are they? Are they a bit tired? Is it time to try something else new? And like I say, you will, I'm sure that identify some that are already, as you identify, and like, oh my God, I've done this so many times. I'm tired. I'm just tired thinking about it. I'm just tired. When it comes up, that needs to be done. It doesn't need to be done. It's just me kind of knee-jerk reaction, like Pavlov reflexes. All behaviors that I carry from many lifetimes. So it's a great way of identifying, seeing these behaviors, when the Sun is shining on your South Node. So when Moon is touching any of your natal planets, Moon transiting Moon on your natal planets, either conjunction or any other aspects, I personally would take time out, because, so remember, the transiting planet is the one that kind of does the work, or rather illuminates in its own way the natal planet, or kind of put a spotlight literally, or in whatever way that transiting planet operate, whatever that its function is. So Moon is really the intuition, the feels, the feelings, the subtle stuff. I mean, its Moon is the night, and the night we kind of operate with different senses. We can't rely on our day senses, right? And more kind of animal, well, So basically, when Moon transits any of your planet, to kind of get the intuitive feel of your natal planet, it's a great time to step away from the world, and be at home Moon, just kind of give it a very safe place where you can explore, or just feel into that natal planet that's being transited by the Moon. When Mercury is transiting, for instance, when Mercury is transiting your Pluto, your Mars, so your Pluto, it's a great time to like either have a therapy session, like some kind of shamanic work, but also therapy session, like a talking session, right? Again, depends where your Moon is. Oh, sorry, I meant to say where Moon is transiting. I do apologize. Mercury, where Mercury is transiting, in what sign, and it's all of that you need to take into account. But it could be great times for just digging deep and analyzing, getting to the root of the problem in mercurial ways. So writing or speaking, again, depending on the sign. Also, in relationship is a great time to have some well, not difficult, but kind of truth-seeking conversations, honest conversations, that might not be taken to personally, being Mercury, right? Just be careful every time, every of this. Just always, be watchful of those triggers and shadows lurking and potentially jumping and surprising you. So with Mercury Pluto, it could be power games, um, you know, also who's right, proving your point, just winning, in the argument or in the point, persuading, manipulating, verbally, right? Venus as well on Pluto is great time to have in conversations about relationships, so just, or even not so much conversations, just do something within a relationship that you fear doing, and I don't know, let's say declare your feelings for someone. So it is about, okay, that's about speaking, but like most of the stuff is about speaking, I suppose. But, or it doesn't have to be, can be, well, let's stick with this just for the sake of the example. Because I found that this is just uncanny how every time Venus touches my Pluto, in any of the aspects, even when it's like a world transits of Pluto and Venus, that relationship, that if I dare to do stuff within my relationship or ships, that I would find really, scary, and just I would consider myself to be too much or too intense with that before, or maybe it's too dark, or it's potentially, too difficult to say or to hear again. That it doesn't necessarily give me what I wanted. In fact, more often than not, it doesn't. But the fact that I've done it, it's just does something for me alchemically, and I'm just free of whatever baggage I carried with the whole dilemma and fear I had around the issue I brought to the relationship. So even though it didn't necessarily resolve anything the way I kind of wanted, it has done some really good for me and to me. So I highly recommend it. Venus and Saturn, or Mercury and Saturn again, particularly Mercury and Saturn would be a great time to have mature kind of serious conversations where you just want to, get clear about who's doing what, who's, kind of managing expectations in relationships, or setting boundaries, just kind of having a grown-up talk kind of thing. Venus and Saturn, personally, I find I'm not really great company. I'm quite serious. I just kind of don't want company myself, right? But it could be, yeah, it might be a good time. Maybe a good time to kind of go to with friends to a lecture, or just have a kind of a more serious activity, less frivolous. Maybe go to, well, I know you get the idea. And then Mars, either way, whether Mars is transiting any of my natal planets, or whether any planet is transiting my Mars, I count to 20 before I do anything or say anything to someone, or even ideally, I avoid communication if it's Mercury. Well, you can feel it coming up. I mean, at least I do. So I find that time great to work through any anger issues, any kind of, if it's Moon and Mars, and particularly the needs unmet and expectations of others to meet your needs, and it's really like, yeah, for me, like I say, for me, a great time, because Mars is a poker. It just it just pokes. It just can't. There's no subtle. It's just gonna rummage there, and it's gonna ruffle feathers, and you're gonna feel it. And obviously, depending what planets we're talking about here that it's touching, it's gonna, it's gonna threaten it. It's gonna rock the boat of that planet. So yeah, think twice about who else is in that boat, so that you don't get them down with you. Have a life boat, no, life thingy belt or whatever. You get the metaphor I'm talking about. But yeah, so those are extra caution around Mars transits. And then, yeah, just like those relationships that are not necessarily personal, like meaning choices. So it's like family, in-laws, colleagues, neighbors, where, people are in your life, and you love them or care for them, or you don't have, maybe you don't, but they're not your choice, so they're not, you have to compromise, you have to tolerate stuff, because you kind of have to have them in your life. You haven't got much choice in that way. Or due to other choices you want to make and keep. This works magic for me, really. I just make sure I'm as much as I can, because I kind of my life is set up so that I truly can, for the most part, to really control this, and it's for everyone's benefit. And then I choose also, like I say, to have certain times to have those conversations that I maybe need to have literally based on these transits, and it just works. And that's what I mean. This is a fantastic short-term planning tool to see how these things work, to see how it's useful. Okay, so yearly planning. This is solar returns mostly. And when I say yearly planning, I kind of mean like New Year's resolution. So I stopped using New Year for that, unless there are some kind of big marking points, timelines, key milestones, just in world transits or personal transits. But really, I'm making it a big deal out of my birthdays, and I'm setting kind of my New Year, like I say, intentions and resolutions for that birthday year. So it's so those charts, the solar return, and I'll link my solar return tutorial in the description below. But they're great to see what you can change, what habits you can actually change or create new habits based on your solar chart. So it's like you're particularly supported in creating those new habits. So let's say you have a sun in the in fourth house, and in your next year birthday or whatever, your solar return sun will be in 10th house. So I would highly recommend to use that year, plan for various ways to coax your sun from the fourth to come out of its comfort zone and do more public stuff. Especially as nowadays, that's kind of a given to all of us. If you want to have some kind of if you want to create a life that touches others in a way that is meaningful to you, we're all dependent on being online, having a public profile of sorts. So it's kind of like it's a must to master that thing for most of us, I suppose, or for a lot of us. So that would be a great time to do that if you are maybe shy and feeling otherwise kind of not at your best element. So it's a great way to find what is possible for you when you step outside a little bit. You have a year, so it's not a lifetime, so you can kind of change your mind at the end, experiment for that year and see whether it is for you, and then at least but that's the year to do it. So, any other time maybe not so, because you're kind of, like I say, not as supported, but this year particularly well suited for that sort of change. And then I use it to integrate into my long-term planning. So some years, some solar returns chart will be particularly relevant for my long-term planning, so I incorporate that. Otherwise, what you want to know, so for your just yearly planning for that birthday year, you want to look at your sun, where it is in terms of the house and the aspects it has. And then the other thing is your ascendant and the ruler of your ascendant, which is kind of the ruler of your chart. So if you're rising Virgo, then Mercury would be the ruler of your chart. Or the ruler of your ascendant. And then you look at those three: your sun, your Mercury in this case, and your Virgo ascendant. Are they in any particularly potent and tight aspects? So then that kind of is, those are the themes you want to be considering for planning your year ahead. And I would look at the year the year after as well, just to kind of know where this is leading into. So have that, at least that's how I like to plan. Moon in Capricorn, all long term, and Mars in Sag, far-reaching goals. And I would start this planning and kind of thinking in 3 months in the run before your solar return, your birthday, basically. Cast the chart, create the chart, and then contemplate it. And then I would take time out for the actual birthday, which often is the day before or the day after. It's not necessarily on your actual birthday, it will tell you. And then on that day, take time out to sort of just kind of like a new moon ritual thing to set your intentions for the year ahead and the rest. Now, this is longer term planning. So some of this is, these are returns basically. And this is somewhat specific and different to everything else I'm talking about here. So let me say a few things. So Mercury and Venus are kind of under a year because their returns are less than a year, but I think it varies also. Basically, it's all up to a year. Sorry, it's all a year or more essentially. But really, what I use returns is to essentially to understand my natal planet. So it's not planning in terms of I haven't got a that's my goal, that's my vision, that's what I want, and so I just figure out the timeline where there are time pockets where I'm going to be particularly helped by the universe, by the transit, to contemplate and reflect and engage with this archetype. So let's say Venus, right? So I'm planning for my Venus return. So I'm looking when my conjunction, when my squares, when my trines, but particularly squares, oppositions, and those kind of more challenging aspects are important. And then what that means essentially. So I'm planning the time out to then contemplate my Venus natal and everything in it, but then also the sign that it's either squaring from or opposing from, or the other square, and then whatever else might be in my chart in those particular areas. And because what they will then help me, it's the road to this Venus in this instance, in this example, becoming a whole, because I'll be considering her from its 4 other points that are kind of trigger points. So the opposition is one kind of integration, the 2 squares are different kind of integration, or just like how can I integrate the thinking of the squaring signs and the squaring points into my natal Venus. Otherwise, if I'm not aware of them, I'll always be triggered by this transit. Something will come at me and me maybe throwing a tantrum or being too upset, or I want to kind of, get strong and good at engaging with those crisis points or those challenges if it's opposition, and not freak out too much, or just benefit from it basically, and develop tools to meet those challenges or crises. So that's really what returns are for in my book. And I call it planning because you need to. It's like, there are timelines and there are, like I say, key time points across the year or longer, depending what you're looking at. And that's, you just want to put it in your diary, essentially. And do some work of, like I say, just contemplation, reflection, journaling, therapy, group work, whatever it is. And then progressions, I said I was going to bring in, so that's like another standalone chart that I use. And it's for longer term because, well, there's no really, forget about that. It's not even about longer or shorter term. It's just essentially what you want with progressions when it comes to planning is you want to, if you have any natal planets, and this means any, and also the asteroids, anything basically can be retrograde other than Moon and Sun. So Chiron, Mercury, Mars, Venus, you may have one of them at least in your chart retrograde. So find the time moment where that planet goes direct by progression. So I have that progress chart as well in my tutorial. I'll hope to remember all this to put in. If not, you can all find this on my YouTube channel. All these they're clearly labeled and entitled. And just look when it's actually turning direct, and that's so like with any retrograde planets, we are tasked essentially to figure out what that planet is for us. So it's kind of like we are reviewing it and redefining and revisiting on our own terms. Well, unless we don't want it to be on our terms and we just want to, use someone else's revision, but that's maybe our free will deciding. I would imagine really the most satisfying way would be to find our own redefinition, sorry. So as it's kind of retrograde natally, that's kind of what you're doing. And then if there will be a time in place, there'll be a time, right, when this would by progression turn direct, and you may feel that all this work you've done on this planet might just now come a point where you want to do something with it and put something out there and push it forward. Like as it's moving forward now, you want to do something forward with it. You want to give it up, not give it up, like share it with produce something and then share it, yeah, make it public, that kind of thing. Also, it's worth checking when your natal planets turn retrograde by progression. So that is a really great time, and I had Mercury experience of that, where yeah, you just become fascinated probably with your mind, and you'll be so, yeah, I mean, depends. Again, I'm thinking this is my Mercury, because whatever it is, whatever sign it is. And this could also change signs. We can actually change signs by the time it either turns direct or goes retrograde. So all that just kind of adds layers to spending time, either to plan to do some action when it turns direct, or to plan to do some reflection and just become more conscious of it and intentional with that archetype, if it turns retrograde by progression. And we come now to my favorite one, or well, the one that it's most complex possibly, but it is kind of really juicy. So in a nutshell, really, the specific life theme planning is about choosing an area of your life that you want to improve. Then you look to astrology, where that area of your life is, by archetype, by house, and then based on what you find in astrology, and after you've done the work with astrology relating to this theme in your life that you want improving on, as I will show you, then you set your vision and you create a plan of action, and then you execute and deliver. So the step one, or pairing up for the life theme, for that, essentially, so this is the piece about what about your life you're not happy enough, what it is that you would like to improve. So let's say you want to have stronger boundaries in your relationships. So immediately I'm thinking Venus and Saturn. You want to pair up your Venus relationships and Saturn boundaries. Or let's say you feel like you would like to be braver, to have more courage, to speak and declare your needs. So immediately again, I'm thinking Moon needs, right? And bravery and courage, Mars. So I would be pairing up Moon and Mars. Let's say you want to, be able to feel it's okay to have conversations and actually engage in heated conversations without losing your rag, and or without becoming too belligerent or volatile, or too scared, or maybe too then withdrawing and compliant because you fear confrontation. So basically, let's say you fear confrontation, so you'd like to not fear confrontation anymore and just feel really at home having conversations that could potentially turn into confrontation. But you feel confident, you want to become confident that, and feel confident that you will be able to handle that. So that to me would be Mars and Mercury. I would be pairing them up. And so as always, as you can see on the picture, this is the book I keep going on about. It's if you want to do, yeah, it's such an easy read, and it's like shadow and light, and it's full of just fantastic books, so deep and yet really easy to read. So I would read it, every archetype. There are all these planets basically. There's a section in the book that each planet is just like has a couple of pages at least. Have a good read, and then to understand, after you have identified your theme without astrology, just plucked it out of thin air kind of thing. This is the area of my life I really am not really happy anymore. You might know straight away, but if you need help, this is the book. And then read all those archetypes. There are, one afternoon, if that, a couple of hours read to then, and you'll know which ones are the ones you need to pair up. So now you pair them up, you found those two planets. This step 2 is kind of pre-planning. This is all pre-planning still. Now you need to really understand them, and so this is like assuming you don't yet, or you don't feel like you do enough. And it's important that you either feel like you really kind of you know. This is not about being a master of them or having mastered them. It's just knowing, particularly knowing all the triggers, knowing all the problems you have with those archetypes that you're going to be working with and planning with, right? So like I say, you want to understand them. So the first piece about understanding is to understand them individually. Then you want to understand their relationship, and then you want to look back in time when they did make contacts to go, oh, right, that's what it felt like, that's what it feels like when they come together in whatever aspect. So the first piece about understanding them individually is obviously, studying, observing yourself, having astrology charts done by astrologers like myself or others, obviously. And then, yeah, just that's basically how you get to know your planets. These two in particular, I would bring in, so the sign, house aspects, also their rulers, then the houses, their rule, who rules them, who they rule, and just everything really. And I would bring in other modalities. I would bring in numerology. I would bring in human design, gene keys in particular. Gene keys are such a rich, rich, rich language and playground for this stuff for the archetypes. Now you understood them individually. Now you want to understand their relationship. This is so critical, a step you cannot skip. That's why I put in bold. And I have two books to recommend. So if they're in aspect, so in astrology there are aspects, as you know probably, as in they're in the right orb or a tight enough orb, and then therefore making a square, trine, opposition, you name it. Then the book, and particularly if you have aspects that are those weird ones, triseptiles, biquintiles, sesqui-squares, you want the book Astrological Aspects: A Process-Driven Approach by Leila Rael and Dane Raja. You can check also my book recommendations. I have a list under that video in the description section of all my books, these included, so you can check them there as well. But this Raja's book on astrological aspects, a process-driven approach, is fantastic, particularly for those like obscure aspects, if you like. So you identify that they're in an aspect, and then study what there is. Just keep reading, and don't take anyone's word for anything. Just figure out for yourself, is this true for me? Do I relate to this? Is this triggering me? Why is it triggering me? And the red, So you've done that, but if don't be fooled, and this is so important, don't be fooled if they're not in an aspect as such. Every planet in the chart is in a relationship to each other, to the others, and to every other, and and there is another book that you want for this. This is where it gets a bit too complex, maybe. So I'm gonna try to keep it simple, because it's kind of complex. But this book is enough for you to figure this out, and it's you can get it on Ari Moshe's website. Again, it's on my books YouTube video. Essentially, it's called Evolutionary Astrology: A Beginner's Guide by Ari Moshe. So that is this visual here is from that book, and that's all you need. That book is all you need to figure out if they're not in aspect, your planets, what phasal relationship they're in. So here I've shown you two examples. Like this is the red, Mars and Neptune are in conjunction because they're next to each other. They're, by astrology rules, they're conjunct, end of. So they're in an aspect. So then you would look at this other book by Dane Raja here, right? But you will want the first book, Evolutionary Astrology by Ari Moshe, if they're in this kind of case, like the green Neptune here and the green Mars over here, which is, so let's say Neptune is at 0 Aries, but Mars is neither 0 Libra nor whatever. I'm not sure what that degree would be if it was a triseptile or Virgo. So it's in no man's land. It's essentially the two are not in aspect, but they are in this relationship called gibbous relationship. And in this instance, that's a relationship that's very Virgo-like, and you'll see in this book by Ari Moshe is just all you need to know there. So get that, sort out, so because you want to understand how the two planets that you're going to be planning with, actually where they're at in their relationship. You want to really kind of know what challenges might be facing you, what obstacles they will be facing as you go along with them. And then the third piece to understanding the players in this planning of yours is to look back in time and find conjunctions are particularly potent, but also squares and oppositions when they will last. The sooner, the closer to your present moment of doing this, probably the better, because unless you have like really good journals to then remember, because what you want to be remembering, not just what was going on in your life, but the themes of the two planets. Around those themes, what was going on, in your life at that time. So without journals, the further back they are, might be a struggle that, but maybe not. So you might be in luck, but it's worth checking just so those are all the help you can, basically any help you can get to the core and essence of what these two are doing in your specific chart, the better. So now step 3 is noting all the key turning points, essentially all the aspects. So the conjunction, the first sextile, which is waxing, then first quarter square, then waxing trine, then opposition, then waning trine, then last quarter square, then waning sextile. So you want to, so if you're starting today, and the closest next will be the waxing trine, you still want to map back to the conjunction, and you'll know why in a few slides, because you essentially conjunctions are the starting points, even if not in the real time, even if not in the real time as you start planning, and even then it might be harder than this might be harder than I make it sound to make it happen this way, but it's worth attempting and making the most of what you can get from that conjunction, even if it was in the past. So you basically want to map out those times, those aspects. When are they happening? What are those dates, basically? So you're kind of noting the key turning points in your time. With dates. Then step 4 is creating a timeline, which is essentially the extension of the previous piece. So they're kind of the same, maybe step. But so now you got those times, and you want to now kind of build around this. So you want to now pay attention to any of these aspects of these transits, right? When he made a conjunction, when he made a square, when he made a trine. Was he stationing direct or was he stationing retrograde? Those are particularly, and I use only one orb for this, like he had to really station direct or retrograde on my planet, as in on the degree, exact degree. So if it's literally conjunction, then it's literally on my planet. But if it's a square, it would be just by the degree exact. So I really use tight orbs here. And I mean, the others, maybe, yeah, you do what you want to do, but I don't. I use this only. And I take that to have an extra importance. So if it's stationing direct, it's almost like it's like an extra push to move forward. But if it's stationing retrograde, it's maybe asking me to revisit something, or by revisiting something, incorporate that into the next leg of the journey, kind of thing. So that's why they're particularly important. Then, so you add this to this timeline that you set up with the previous slide with all the, basic turning points, essentially those aspects, yeah. Then this is where you bring in solar returns. So if it's a 5-year plan, you look where your solar return charts for those 5 years are particularly meaningful. So that would be some conjunctions that are happening, this transiting planet. So let's say we're using with this Mars and Neptune thing. So when Mars, transiting Mars, if that's what you're doing, your Mars, transiting Mars to your Neptune, when it's, let's say, conjunct your solar return sun or solar return ruler of your chart, then it's like a particularly important year. And then obviously that time, the actual time, in that year. Also any big personal transit. So during these 5 years, maybe Pluto will be conjunct your moon and you're working with Mars and Neptune, and neither of them are in Cancer, either by transit or by natal placement. So in a way, Pluto and moon won't necessarily have much, maybe weight, although they could be by sign, they could be by other things. But let's assume, my point here is any Pluto transit like that, for instance, would be super significant. And even if it doesn't relate too much to the theme, because it will be affecting you greatly. So you don't want to miss it and you don't want to dismiss it. So just kind of, again, plan and kind of have like an add-on or subtask, if you like, if we are doing project management lingo, to pay attention about all the themes of Pluto and Moon, and then you investigate what that in your particular chart is about. So be vigilant to that, and then just don't let that carry you away, or plan to be carried away without derailing maybe your bigger project or bigger plan kind of thing, right? Because Pluto on Moon, trust me, it's a huge piece, as you may already know anyway. And the last piece, you want to kind of include any big world transit. So for instance, if you, after this presentation, you feel inspired, you want to just start doing your own, don't forget to include Saturn conjunct Jupiter in Aquarius in December this year. And it is in December, isn't it? Yeah, I'm pretty sure. Because that's like a big important, like we had the Pluto Saturn in January this year. That's another big one, not as big, but still big. And so yeah, even if it doesn't necessarily touch on any of these important points or these particular Mars and Neptune, let's say, still see where it is in your chart, and it will be, because it will be energies that will be, it's affecting the world and all of us. So, and you specifically within your, wherever that particular conjunction will land. So be mindful of that too. And now this is the final piece. So at this point you have your, the actual format of this. I was thinking of how to share that, but I just couldn't make it too coherent rather enough. I have various things. I have notebooks, I have calendars, I have posters on my walls. I'm looking at them as I'm speaking. I have my smaller books, I have my digital notebooks, and I record various, that would be a presentation in itself. Just find the way that it works for you. You essentially want to put this somewhere where you can, you can easily access it, and at a glance is important to me. So that's why I have like calendars, like a poster type that I created. And it's like a calendar thing with the dates and all that on the wall. But then I also have my book where I, sit with and write in and plan more, and, and then I have other kind of little things that are quick also references, and I overlap with different, I have various things going. I have solar returns, I have this bigger thing planned that I'll share with you in a moment, like this 5-year, 20-year plan or whatever. Then I have a year plan, then I have a 3-year plan. Not plans, they're 3-year kind of goals that are particularly important, and they just happen to be 3 years, but they're themes that will take that long kind of thing, right? So yeah, basically you can end up, if you're like me, you can end up with many different storage ways to store this information. So like I say, that's up to you. But at this point, you have something. You have a calendar, or you have this. You have mapped this out basically in terms of timeline, in terms of when it's happening, and then wherever you'd go and plan for more like monthly, daily, weekly, whatever, probably weekly. Well, depends. Again, it depends what planet you're working with, how fast it's all happening and moving, and but essentially, so now you wanna plan. So you've got a timeline, but now you want to plan. So conjunctions are the times, like a new moon, where the theme of the two planets together are fused. The themes, rather, the energies are fused, and then specific to you being wherever that's happening, like in what house it's happening, will be then obviously specific to you, and then whatever else, other aspects around it and sign and all that. But my point is, it's like, because it's like a new moon, it's like dark phase. So you want to be, it's time to allow the energies to inform your vision, basically. And which is why I don't really do setting intentions on the new moon. I do it after. And I personally don't do it on every new moon and anyway, but I do it more like this, like my birthdays. But for this purposes, for this kind of longer, let's say medium to longer term, let's say we're talking about here longer term planning, like, which we are. Sorry, I forgot that this is the theme here. Sorry. So it's like, let's say 5 years, and let's say you're planning to publish a book. In fact, you would love to publish a book and have a, you know, obviously Oprah to interview you about it, but also to have a film made by it, based on it, type of thing. So at a new conjunction, you are kind of feeling your way what the book is about and how you're gonna go about writing it and creating it. Is it more fiction? Is it not? Is it visual? Are you gonna be integrating other stuff? Is it gonna be mixture memoir or whatever? So basically, you're feeling all that as the conjunction is infusing and in itself doing its kind of alchemy on you. So you wait until that has settled before you actually draw or write up your vision or statement or mission statement or goals. And but also at this point, your kind of deadline is waning trine. So it's not opposition, it's a waning trine that comes after the opposition. So that's your deadline. So that's your, like, the final, the wildest vision you have for this particular project. So, and we said did I say 5 years or 3 years? So again, you kind of figure out what you can achieve within 3 years. So you can write a book, publish it, and actually have someone to come and get you, a movie deal. So it's relatively reasonable, I would imagine. And you kind of pin that point in time at the time of the waning trine. And that's when you're set. So then the next aspect is transit, is the waxing sextile. So at this point, you have your first draft, or you started drafting. Again, depends on the timeline. If you have a year between these two, which you wouldn't in 3 years, but you had a few months, so you would have started your draft. You would have maybe started doing the research. In fact, if it's a book analogy, this is probably the time for research. And then the sextile is kind of the spark. So that's when you kind of start drafting. So between the conjunction and setting this vision and the waxing sextile, you're researching, let's say. And then you start drafting at the sextile phase. And then by the first quarter square, you have the first draft. And now it's a time, decisions and actions, meaning editing and rewriting. Then waxing trine is opportunities. So seek them out, be agent for yourself, like not literally book agent. I mean, be the agent. Take what's the word? Have the agency of doing and making things happen for yourself, but also stay open to and be on the lookout for opportunities coming your way, because trines are kind of like that they all of a sudden things start coming your way, right? They're supportive, they bring good luck and good fortune type of aspects. And so in terms of this book process writing project, at this point you could be looking for first feedback. So get a beta readers of your draft, second draft, or maybe get writer's blog, or create your own writer's blog, or test basically in other ways. Get a what's that called, a reading group or something, or writers group. Yeah, anyway, I'm not doing that myself, so I wouldn't know, but yeah, so you kind of like create opportunity and stay open to it. And then the opposition time would be a time of publishing, let's say, when you get proper big time feedback. Oppositions are that, integrating feedback. That's the essence of oppositions, really, in the sense that everything becomes like you become so visible, like full moon phase, where everything, sun is glaring at you at the moon, right? Even though I'm not talking, this is like Mars and Neptune or whatever planets we're using here. But the full phase, the opposition phase, is that of the full moon phase. So everything gets illuminated and becomes clear and visible. and the feedback comes your way whether you want it or not. And so the piece, the Libra piece, because that's also Libra Aries kind of axis archetype, is to listen, and to listen really, really intently and carefully to the feedback, bad and good, and then not fall into either overly people pleasing, so you're just giving them whatever they want, but also, but to kind of fall back on Aries and kind of be independent and be, be selfish in the sense like, well, this is what I'm, this is mine, and this is how this book needs to be. I hear you, but I'm not going to change just because you don't like it. I think after considering what you just told me, let's say this is a fictional exchange here I'm talking about, obviously, um, I decided actually, no, I'm good where I'm at. But hear it. You need to listen to the feedback to move this thing along, to move your project, to move your dream, to move your vision along in the right direction. You need to integrate feedback. And so then we are at the waning trine, sorry. And after you have integrated this feedback, so it's either this is maybe a part 2, or it's adaptation. Now you have written what's the terminology for that? Like a script for a movie based on this feedback. So it's like an adaptation of the book, but you made it better, let's say. And now you are seeking either, film producers or opera as well, and those opportunities that will, trine, because the trine is going to give them to you if you have done all this, really worked on all the steps up until that point. That's why I say that, the waning trine is the time for your ultimate vision to come true for this leg of this project and journey. And then, so let's say you got a film deal and it's all fantastic, you're famous, you got this even better polished piece that's now either film or, like I say, a part 2 or whatever, and sequel, right, in the sense of the book. And the world is on, eating out of your palm, you're on top of the world, you're this, you achieved, basically, you're living your dream. So that's your waning trine. And then we are approaching the last quarter square. So in between the waning trine and the last quarter square, you're kind of moving our way slowly from this fabulous dream come true to now realizing, okay, this is great, but now I don't want to get stuck in this identity. I don't want to be a writer of, let's say, romance. That was a romantic kind of fiction. I want to go science fiction, or I want to do history fiction. What that will mean, you will lose at least, well, some chunk of your fans. Some will be, come with you because they will, you're still this same writer and same style, just a different sort of genre. And that's it. You'll have to make peace with it. So this is the kind of transition between Saturn and Uranus, or Capricorn and Aquarius, where we need to leave behind the structures that have supported us, and but we can feel ourselves growing out of them and becoming too big for them, and essentially, if we stay there, we're just gonna get encrusted or imprisoned, or like deformed, because we won't be growing freely. We'll just be suppressed by those structures that were fantastic up until this point, but not anymore. So that's a really, of all the squares, of the 2 squares, this is the really tough one, where we have to say, well, we know deep down that we really, if we are to continue feeling and living our dream, we need to keep making these tough decisions at this turning point, usually, typically. So it's also a reorientating point called. And so you reorientate. And then between the reorientate and reorganize, as in waning sextile, you're essentially, so now reset, right? And you're reorganizing yourself. So you're doing some other kind of research, maybe preparing for this, maybe new, or maybe going on some, courses for science fiction, or just taking time out to figure out what else you want to do. Maybe you're not clear that you want to do science fiction. Maybe you just know that you don't want to do romance anymore. You've done that, ticked that box, got a t-shirt, and you want to move on to the next thing, and you don't know what that yet is. So you're reorganizing your life in this kind of in-between place, and probably struggling a little bit with all this letting go of this other stuff, and maybe even dealing with some not so favorable press or whatever. This is all part and parcel of that kind of last leg of the journey, of that last quarter. And between till there is a new conjunction again, including this waxing sextile. I meant waning sextile. And then we're back again and at this point, yeah, you might want to continue. Maybe this is the thing for you that you want to keep going, or you may have just had one run with Mars and Neptune, or in this case, whatever it would have been, I don't know, Mercury and Saturn, or um, Sun and Saturn, whatever, and or all three. And now you want to move on to another planet, or keep this one going as well, or just switch them. So now you want to look at Saturn transiting your Mercury as opposed to Mercury transiting your Saturn, let's say. So yeah, so this is that piece, the piece about planning. So at this stage, well, you have executed your plan, basically. So let me give you my own personal example just to kind of see this in action. So for me, it was just, it started with a kind of more general idea of success. Like, so what is it for me? What does it for me personally means to be successful? And I grapple with that, well, most of my life. And I want to share the kind of the key takeaway that is going to be the precursor to what I'm going to share in terms of the actual process of planning in my own example, which is when you contemplate the idea of success, I suggest that you look at your Saturn as opposed to your 10th house. So your 10th house is where the public will recognize that's something about you that they want or need, or both. And you will see it come naturally out of you, whatever that is, that you just happen to play the role easily, effortlessly, your 10th house, right? Whatever you have there. If you have Saturn there as well, then this is kind of wrapped up in the same thing. So then this kind of doesn't apply to you. Or rather, both things that I'm making distinction here for apply to you. But if you don't, then if you just have something else, I don't know, Sagittarius or Libra or whatever, so no Saturn, right? Even if you have Capricorn, it's still, you want to look to your Saturn. So it's still not the same thing necessarily. Saturn and 10th house, right? But just 10th house, whatever it is there, that's what will be your kind of public service, public image, public brand. And so, for instance, you could be a surgeon, right? Let's say you're a surgeon and you're this famous surgeon and you have this greatly on the surface successful life, and you're happy with that, right? But you're also someone to actually find most privately and intimately and personally meaningful life and living. You look to your Saturn. So you could be this surgeon who is that, like I say, because you have, I don't know, Scorpio on the 10th house, and or Virgo, Mercury in Scorpio, or Pluto in Virgo there on top of your whatever. I don't know. Sorry, I'm thinking, is that surgeon? It could be, I think, and very much so. But actually, what gives you, like you privately, you deeply, soulfully, you deeper sense of meaning and passion and satisfaction and just happy to live your life in those days, is when you go into your shed every evening and every weekend, whenever you're not working in this surgeon role, to, I don't know, make cuckoo clocks and play with wood and just be a sculptor and whatever your hobby, your passion, that sense of accomplishment, that sense of meaningful success and mastery over time, is that sense of deepest satisfaction with your life is your Saturn. So like I say, if that's your Saturn in 10th house, then you're sorted. You have you don't have twice as much to do as us who don't have that setup. But if, like me, you have that setup differently, your Saturn is somewhere else, not in your 10th house, you will find that your Saturn is your idea of most profoundly satisfying life when you keep your Saturn happy, not your 10th house, your Saturn. So that's it. So that's that piece about the general kind of helpful tip to everyone, irrespective of what follows, which is my personal example. So I figured out my Saturn. So this is, so I know what my Saturn is, and well, as much as I will know my Saturn in 12th house, but and then it was like, okay, so I want my Mars. So how do I make this Saturn happen? And big piece was happening around my Saturn transiting conjunct my natal Mars. And since it's been in Sagittarius, which is where Mars is I have about 20 notebooks written on the topic. Not written on the topic, just I was struggling with that theme of self-discipline and productivity. I mean, 20 notebooks within a year, and it was stationary retrograde on my Mars. So the whole year it was in conjunction, more or less on and off, but far more on than off. And it was just uncanny. And this wasn't actually, this was after this, I started to plan with this. But because I had 20 notebooks, it was unmistakable that this is the theme. And it was a lot of it to do, most of it to do with art, really, which is my Saturn in 12th in Taurus. And or just creative outlet, not whatever, And so soon after that conjunction, so 2018, I started to plan, basically, to plan. But also I was still working through the understanding piece of it. And I knew what my vision was because of all that, really. I was creating my vision, and I was very much making it loud and clear during the whole of that 2017 when it was conjunct, Saturn was conjunct my Mars. So in that sense, I kind of written it in a way. So that wasn't my priority anymore. I knew where I was headed. It's like, how do I get there? How do I make this happen? So Mars, right? And so then I looked at their relationship in my natal chart to understand kind of how they trigger each other, how they're used to talking to each other, what's their kind of natural fall back on kind of way of being, right, and operating. And they're actually in aspect, not in a relationship, so they're actually in an aspect. And the aspect is one of those peculiar ones, sesqui square. And in the book that I recommended earlier, here is a piece that kind of summarizes it, just, really kind of gets to the heart of it. It says, to be truly successful, the person with a significant sesqui square needs to align their inner vision with the needs, not merely wants and desires, but needs of the others and the public. So I'm identifying the relationship. Now, what do I do with this relationship? Like, what do I make of this? So I know, my inner vision, and that's kind of like 12th house Saturn anyway for me, because it's the inner vision. It's inner vision. It's not like a 11th house outer vision, if you like. It is this imaginative, the world of my internal imagination or inner imagination, or what's another word? I can't think of it. But it's not about what I hear people tell me they want and desire. So again, this is the 12th house, kind of how it's not what it seems. It's not what I'm told. It's not clear cut. It's not words as they are communicated, but I need to kind of suss out what the needs behind the words are. So it's very indirect, if you see. It's like indirect engagement. So that was one kind of piece of wisdom I got from this. And then it says the needs of others and the public. So this is 7th house and 10th house. So the ruler of my 10th house is Saturn, and it's already in this mix of the two, so I'm not worried about him anymore. But the 7th house, I have Neptune there. So it's in Scorpio, so I could be looking at Pluto, and Pluto is in 5th. So it's, again, kind of creative self-expression. So that's kind of covered already by my Saturn in Taurus in 12th. So I'm good there as well. And I wouldn't be reluctant including Pluto because it's so important anyway. But my point is, you can kind of see how this can kind of spiral out of control a little bit. Again, if you're comfortable, why not? It's just, even for me, with someone who's been with astrology for so long, still it would get too much. So I'm happy that I nailed it to 3. So I'm basically planning with 3 planets because, in the house of the other, right, the 7th house, I have Neptune. And so I'm flashing out the vision. Is there a third player? Yes, there is Neptune. So I'm looking at the relationship of Neptune in my chart, of my natal Neptune to my natal Saturn and my natal Neptune to my natal Mars. So neither of in aspects, they're all in these phasal relationships. So to Saturn is in gibbous phase, which is a Virgo kind of flavors phase, which is about daily practice, working on refining and improving something, whatever that is. And then Mars and Neptune are in a new conjunction, so that's experimenting, highly subjective and experiential. And these are my kind of signposts, like on the high road when you have those like cat's eye or something, and then or the kind of rubber when if you kind of veer off your track, it will jerk you back into, if you fall asleep, goodness me, God forbid, or behind the wheel, and then you kind of veer off and then it gets that rattly sound. Oh my God, I'm not sure how it's called, but you know what I mean. So it's kind of like I'm using it as such. It needs to be daily practice of sorts. I need to be refining and improving it. My Saturn kind of Neptune conversation, which is the art piece really, and my Mars and Neptune, again, it's kind of art, but doing it. This is the Saturn Neptune is more like a vision, and Mars Neptune is more like doing it in terms of art, right? Neptune, because that's the part of Neptune that speak to my own vision for my my life future kind of thing, or my life lived well. So it's about experimenting, highly subjective and experiential, and that's what I've been doing. So I've been kind of making art that's like that. I mean, you can say any art is subjective, but in a way, not necessarily. So many could be political, and I'm not interested in that. And anyway, so that you get the idea there. I think this piece at the bottom, there's a related house and sign. I spoke of the 10th, and Capricorn moon is ruled by my Saturn. So that's kind of covered already. So now, because really I'm looking at Saturn transiting my Mars, and then Saturn transits to my Neptune, but also Mars to my Neptune, Neptune to my Mars. With that, I'm kind of mixing it all up. But really, on the other hand, on this other kind of Mars Saturn piece, I'm looking at Saturn transiting my Mars. My point is it's a slow, very slow transit. So I'm looking Saturn Mars contacts from 1986, 1994, and 2001. And 2001 was very much kind of creative year, but the others are I can't even pinpoint them actually. They're that far back, and I don't have journals anymore of that time. So that would be an example when it's too far back. But Neptune squares Saturn happened 1997, 1998 in Aquarius and Taurus. So Neptune was in Aquarius, my Saturn is in Taurus. So that was broadcasting, journalism I was doing at the time. I was writing for the local newspaper. I was producing some shows on very local, nothing big in terms of like reach, but still such a fantastic creative outlet. It was one of the best years of my life. And I was in interior design, as in I was accessorizing, for anyone in the UK out there, I was accessorizing DFS shops with all the sort of just the printing stuff around, like just, arranging, and we used to call it accessorizing. So I was like a freelancer. And then Saturn conjunct Neptune, Saturn transiting conjunct Neptune happened in 2014, just before, no, it was 2016 when I first started Saturn through Sagittarius, sorry. And I started a couple of creative business startups, more just as a way of kind of projects that I charge a little bit something. So I didn't have a business plan or anything serious, but I just wanted to experiment with this kind of some concepts that kind of creative, a business, and and so looking back gave me this sense that this was happening, particularly with the Saturn Neptune contacts. It was all about, so Saturn in 12th, my natal placement, but also Saturn Neptune, which is Neptune 12, right? Are all about kind of bringing some my vision that's kind of artistic, imaginative, into the world of business, but also into the form, into reality, Saturn, right? And it's like an affirmation, just strengthening my vision, knowing that this is what happens. This is where the juices come from when the two come together, or what the juices are about. And then this is the actual, and that's it. This is the last slide. Basically, just want to kind of show you what this looks like. This is one of my notebooks, and this one is particularly dedicated to my Mars and Saturn because there is such a big storyline there. So this is, on one hand here, is from last year, 2019, starting on this side here, yeah, on the left, right. So that's like big, all major transits for me between now and when my progressed Mars goes direct in 2032 and 2033. I have some stuff as well there. And so parallel to that, I have so Saturn transit in Mars and Saturn transit in Neptune. As you can see there, the little n means natal. And then Saturn is in, so it was 2016, not 2017. Sorry, I got that wrong. When Mars was conjunct my, sorry, Saturn conjunct my Mars. So yeah, so this is how I'm keeping tabs on this. So the first kind of big plan, big kind of materialization of this bigger vision, if you like, is going to be happening in 2022, or rather in the run up to it. And then it's a kind of building on layers and layers and the final piece is 2036, which is when there is a Pluto-Saturn conjunction, opposition happening. And if you watch my astrology for coronavirus, or the Pluto-Saturn conjunction astrology, I suppose, which are connected, is where I speak of that year, is like when Saturn and Pluto they had a conjunction this January, and then in 2036 they will have the opposition. So much will come to light what this was all about for us collectively, but also in our individual personal charts. And there was one piece, and yeah, so that's Mars will go direct, progress Mars, a few years before then, or a couple of years. Is it 3 or something? Yeah, no, 4 even. So it's like my point with the big, really big and wide picture, and then this one particular track that I'm going down, which is Mars Saturn. You can see all of a sudden how there is so much overlap of the other stuff coming through and supporting this journey. And okay, this is just my example, but I have no doubt that it would happen. It would just, you'd find those connections and those correspondences if you did this way as well. Okay, and on that note, that's it. I hope this was helpful. I hope you'll join me in being geek when it comes to planning with astrology. And yeah, I hope you find as much fun and joy and success, your very own unique kind of success with in doing this. And I shall see you next week.